Historically a brutally intelligent and powerful race, the Dragonkin are enslaved to guard an elder artifact to the end of their days. Failure to do so leads them to feel pain, which quickly turns to anger and destruction to those who are unfortunate enough to come across their path. Owing to recent discoveries and some Grandmaster level quests, we found out a lot more about the Dragonkin and their history, especially since one of the Dragonkin is a main antagonist of Dragonslayer II, which I'll cover. The Elder God Jas enslaved the Dragonkin a very long time ago to guard the Stone of Jas. As such, when the stone is used, the Dragonkin feel pain, and with prolonged use, they become enraged and wreak havoc wherever they are. This pain is what they refer to as the Curse. Due to this, two factions of Dragonkin arose, the Necrocerutes and the Dactyl, the distinguishing feature being that the Necrocerutes have succumbed to the Curse and embraced its power, whilst the Dactyl try to resist the pull of the stone and experiment with ways to withstand the Curse and eventually break it. The inhabitants of Kefsi misused the stone for their own gain, which caused the Dragonkin a lot of pain, and due to the connection to the stone, the Necrocerutes discovered the location of Kefsi. Though the inhabitants fought back using Bane weaponry, killing numerous Dragonkin, they were vanquished and were driven to extinction. Though for whatever reason, neither of the Dragonkin factions decided to do anything about the Bane weaponry that was discovered. This decision would prove to be fatal during the 4th Age. During this time was also when Zorgoth, a Dactyl that focused on experimentation and labs hidden throughout Gielinor, attempted many experiments to create dragons that could resist the pull of the stone. This was also done due to the fact that Dragonkin are actually incapable of reproducing, which led to attempts of creating beings of the same lineage as themselves, which resulted in the creation of dragons. Another important dragon to mention is Karulm, who grew tired of the God Wars ripping Gielinor apart, and so he moved to a mountain to begin his own experiments, taking numerous notes as time went on. Away from the harsh criticism of other Dragonkin, he set to work on several experiments that utilised resources unique to the mountain and terrain around him. First, he created worms after they had been driven to near extinction during the God Wars. This was followed by drakes, though in his eyes these were both failures. Third time lucky, right? So on his third attempt, he created the Hydras, the one thing stopping me from completing the Kurend and Kebos Elite Diary, so I share the sentiment of Karulm when he saw them as failures, despite showing promising results early on. Even the alchemical Hydra was seen as a failure, as he could not replicate this creature. Seeking other material, he moved to Mount Quidamorthum after hearing rumours of a unique lizard species. Though the records stop as of this point, it's easy to assume that due to his experiments, the Great Olm was the magnum opus of his experiments due to its draconic-like appearance and attacks. Finally, an unnamed Dragonkin moved to the Poison Wastes and created several serpents, which after a process of elimination, one would grow to become Zulrah. Growing too ambitious, the Dragonkin was actually consumed by Zulrah and its offspring, as they chose to ignore the warning signs that it intended to eat them. Another worthwhile mention is the Dragonkin Skekka, who was oddly peaceful. She inhabited Fossil Island and most likely created the Wyverns. They've certainly had their hand in not only the history of Gielinor, but shaping parts of it as well, and this was no different in the 4th Age. The 4th Age, informally known as the Age of Mortals, was when the surviving races of the God Wars began to rebuild, amongst the ruins and rubble that was left from the destruction the gods left behind. It was also during this age where the Dragonkin that had succumbed to the curse that once again began attacking human settlements, leading to a series of events known as the Dragonkin Conflicts. The Necrocerutes spread constant terror to cool their rage, and this unfortunately lasted for around 100 years. What had caused this rage, you might ask? Well, as we know the curse of the Dragonkin, the gods Saradomin and Zamorak both abused the stone during the God Wars. Regular weapons were largely ineffective against them, and because of this, many fled west to Zeah. Those that stayed behind persevered, and as the conflicts escalated, humans found the Dragonbane weaponry from Kefsi, allowing them to start turning a tide of battle to their favour. How did they find those weapons? I don't know. Just the indomitable human spirit, I suppose. But this is where our pal Zorgoth, the Dragonkin with all of his labs, comes back into the story. Seeing that their vulnerability was laid bare by the weaponry, he ramped up his experimentation with other Dragonkin on dragons. Aiming to turn the tide of war back to their favour once again by creating dragons with greater strength and aggression, he injected them with certain fungi to see what kind of mutations could happen. The first test took place in a lab on Crandor, which led to the creation of a certain green dragon with heightened aggression after hundreds of trials. Deeming this as not good enough, they moved on to their next lab, Ungale. Here, they attempted to change the subject from green dragons to blue dragons. This is what led to the creation of the Vorkath, 2 at the very least to be exact. Though possessing increased strength, they were less aggressive, most likely due to their undead nature, destroying one during a fit of rage in what he saw as another failure, though he would later come to regret that decision. Humans had discovered the island and swiftly began advancing towards it, forcing Zorgoth to once again abandon his lab, leaving the last surviving Vorkath behind as an obstacle. Fleeing towards his third lab on Lithcrin to further continue his experiments. Translated as the Superior Fortress, Lithcrin was used as Zorgoth's main base during the Dragonkin Conflicts, and the site of many different experiments. In Avis's diary, it's noted how Zorgoth had kidnapped demons, giants, and spectres to take to this island to continue his experiments. A group of sailors had spotted the island accidentally when they were forced to take a different route than usual, travelling through the mostly uncharted northern seas. Claiming they saw Dragonkin architecture on the island, they reported these sites to a group of heroes. The band of heroes that included Robert the Strong, Avas, Kamora Shazian, and Tristan Corvo, and they decided to take the battle to Zorgoth on his own terrain. The 4 rushed to the island and encountered the Dragonkin by an ancient set of doors, and unfortunately lost Avas during the battle, though they were able to successfully kill the Dragonkin guarding the vault. Enacting the emergency protocol within the vault, they placed it into lockdown and trapped Zorgoth within. Problem solved, right? As they feared what would happen should those giant doors ever open again, they split the Dragon Key and hid pieces of it all around Gielinor. Robert hid 2 pieces in Ungale and the Karamjan Temple, Tristan buried a piece in the Mortmire Swamp, and Kamora travelled to Zaya to form House Shazian, taking her key piece to the grave. After the Battle of Lithcrin, the conflict did unfortunately continue, though things began dying down as the Dragonkin began losing ground and forces. One conflict that was documented was that of Robert and his panther, Odysseus. Seen during the quest A Tale of Two Cats, we see how Robert and his panther reach a Dragonkin castle to confront another Dragonkin. Though this battle did kill Odysseus and nearly Robert, he managed to kill the Dragonkin, achieving another win for humanity. It's our favourite part of any lore video, when we get involved. Now get your mole slippers on, because we're going dragon hunting. Announced during RuneFest 2017 and coming out as a sequel to Dragonslayer 1, Dragonslayer 2 was officially released on the 4th of January 2018. And it starts with us journeying back to Crandor to investigate the laboratory on the island with a researcher named Dallas Jones. Before Elvarg's brutal attack, she had went into a deep slumber that allowed Crandor to flourish and become a bustling island that housed a settlement with mages and adventurers alike. Though when one of these adventurers awoke Elvarg, that all changed, and within the span of a few weeks, Elvarg burned Crandor to the ground and claimed the domain as her own. After killing and beheading the beast, we return an undetermined amount of time later, around 17 years, and enter the old lair once again. Using a pickaxe on a covered up wall, we find the abandoned hidden laboratory and begin investigating. Finding some old notes and killing a level 100 spawn, or a facehugger lookalike. After it bursts out attempting to kill us, we inspect the mural which illustrates dragons and fungi with the word Lithcrin. This is when Dallas recalls an old settlement on Fossil Island with similar architecture. He even found a book there mentioning a place called Lithcrin, and so we move on to the house on the hill. Searching high and low, we find pieces of a map of Fossil Island and piece them together to form a complete charted map of the surrounding areas, with 2 parts being highlighted to us. Sailing to Lithgren after we build a small rowboat ourselves, we head through the fortress and find a passageway through a trapdoor to a set of ancient doors that seem to be impossible to open. Searching a burnt skeleton and obtaining Avis's diary, it lets us learn the Battle of Lithgren and the leader of the heroes, Robert the Strong. Informing Dallas that Robert was actually reincarnated into Bob the Cat, he asks us to track him down. Travelling far and wide, we use our enchanted Catspeak amulet to find Bob, and we explain to him that we need his memories of his past life, but Bob, unfortunately, can't remember. So we talk to the Sphinx and he grants us the ability to speak with cats without an amulet. That sounds like a lot of people's dreams come true, doesn't it? Though the Sphinx can't help further, we ask the Oniromancer to help us retrieve Bob's memories. Through this, we enter Bob's dreams and we speak to not Bob, who tells us to defeat the Guardian to bring back the memories. We fight Robert the Strong, and once he is vanquished, Bob remembers all of his past life, showing us a cutscene of the confrontation in front of the gates. And this is where Bob tells us our next objective, getting the Dragon Key. We travel through the Karamjan Temple in the Karazi jungle to work our way through a maze and retrieve a piece of the key. Then, we go to Mauritania and hurt ourselves a lot to find the second piece. To retrieve the Ungale key, we need to face Vorkath and slay it, though this dragon is a weaker version than what we can farm after the quest. Once we defeat him, we move on to the Dragonkin lab and rush past spiders to investigate a few machines and incubators, reading old notes to piece together what happened here. Once we get the key piece, we move on to Korend, learning of how Kamora travelled to start House Shazian. Speaking to multiple people about Kamora, we eventually end up going to the Shazian crypts, and travel through several layers to come across a puzzle, which, once solved, allows us to unlock Kamora's tomb and take the key piece from her skeletal hands. How classy. With all 4 pieces, we then travel to the ancient cavern, where we run through a perilous and dangerous cave filled with mithril dragons and brutal green dragons. We take all of the pieces to the ancient dragon forge and reforge the dragon key. We then return to Lithgren and open the ancient vault doors, where we, alongside Bob and Dallas, find a live dragon. Zorgoth reveals himself and explains that the dragon before us is named Galvek, meaning hope in his language. Zorgoth then remarks at how Robert has changed forms, and how the attempt on his life by Robert had failed. Dallas then pipes up and asks about Elvarg, and Zorgoth reveals the history of the Dragonkin Conflicts as I explained before, dwindling numbers and their attempts to turn the tide of battle, and how he wanted to create a dragon that could control the minds of other dragons as an ultimate weapon. Well, as this plan was seemingly foiled when Robert sealed the vault, this actually helped Zorgoth as he had hundreds of years to plan for his perfect creation. Though Zorgoth tried to state that the Dragonkin were only defending themselves, Robert reiterates how the Dragonkin attacked first, though this falls on deaf ears, as Zorgoth only sees the prejudice against his kind, and he calls humanity a disease. Calling Galvek from his incubation chamber, the dragon launches a fireball that kills Dallas, but we narrowly avoid with Bob. Smashing through the roof of Zorgoth, we turn around and go onwards to formulate a plan. We gather the heads of the kingdoms of Gielinor that include King Lathus, or Thoros, depending if you've done Song of the Elves, King Rold, Ser Amik Vars, and Brunt the Chieftain. Speaking amongst each other, the meeting ends with an alliance the likes Gielinor has not seen in a millennia, all the kingdoms uniting to take on the scourge of the Dragonkin. With the combined fleets of all the kingdoms, we set sail towards the Dragonkin fortress on Ungale to stop Zorgoth. Sailing through the treacherous seas, we see an army of dragons gliding towards us to counter the advance. We set sail on Brunt's ship and help in repelling the dragon assault, healing warriors and repairing the boat as dragonfire is spewed all around us. As time goes on, things seem hopeless and the ship slowly gets chipped away plank by plank. Though the attack by the dragons seemed to be successful, we advance with the remaining army, allowing those left behind to recuperate and catch up. We navigate through the shipwrecks and help out the leaders of each ship kill several dragons, 1 red dragon, 2 iron dragons and 3 brutal dragons. Surely we can take a break now. Nope. We then kill 2 green dragons and blue dragons, and then we kill even more dragons. When does it end? Zorgoth and Galvek board the ship, and Galvek launches dragonfire that kills 4 Varrock guards. They're pretty used to that anyway. Then he shoots dragonfire at us, but Bob valiantly jumps in front of us, sacrificing his life so we can save the world. With seething revenge filling our eyes, we turn our gaze to the remaining dragons while we avoid constant fireballs from Galvek, killing 6 more dragons before we reach the culmination of this battle. Oh boy, Galvek. What a fight. This is where I got my first quest cape, and I can remember sweating this fight so hard. 1,200 hit points, 4 phases, and 1 big ugly dragon. We fight him and the battle is long and bloody, as Galvek uses all 3 forms of combat, high damage dragonfire, and purple dragonfire that deactivates prayers, though obviously we beat him. As Galvek reaches 0 health, he spirals out and falls to the ground, shooting 1 last dragon breath to try and hit us. Fortunately, it shoots backwards, hitting Zorgoth and incinerating him to ash. Should have turned on tile indicators, my guy. Celebrating our victory over the Dragonkin once more, we proceed back to bury Bob and mourn him. Can we get an F in the comments to pay our respects? But once again, victory was attained, but at what cost? Dragonslayer 2 was a really good quest. Hell, you'll hear me say that about most OSRS quests. It was an adventure, perilous, filled with emotion and shock, and with a satisfying ending that pins the Dragonkin threat as history, as far as we know. The boss fights were unique, the scenes were great, and the storytelling was top notch. What else could we ask for in a sequel to an 18-year-old quest? Just gotta see what they come up with next. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to say I try to respond to as many comments as possible, but I do lose track with work and just general life. But I do appreciate you all, and I really do value any feedback you guys give. So as always, thanks for watching, and see you next time.